Hi there, this Chuck with Pocket Snakes. We've got, I soaked some few 100 foot of cowhide string or cowhide lace. It's going to show you the process for wet stretching a large quantity of it. And you want to do at least one loop over a hook. And then you pull, and this lace is wet, so it's going to stretch and leak water everywhere. So I've got the bucket underneath it. But you can see the difference in width. And there's two benefits to wet stretching. One is it compacts the leather. And two, if it's going to break, it'll show you where it's weak and where it's going to break. So if it breaks, that's okay, because you want it to show you where it's weak before you're braiding it. And I usually stretch it in both directions to even it out. Then I usually flatten it before processing it. And you'll end up with some long pieces and some short pieces. And you may or may not end up with anything but a bunch of pieces of lace, but at least you know it's very strong if it survives this process. And not every time will you have that real good feeling that the lace is going to be strong enough for what you're doing. And since I'm building whips with this particular cow lace, I'd prefer to have it break while I'm doing this than during the process of plaiting a belly into a whip. So I'm pulling hard on one side and keeping tension on the other side. It's kind of jerky. You can see a radical difference there because it's squished way down. You see all that water come out of it. Just fair warning, I do this stuff barehanded, but it will tear your hands up. Still got a lot of tannins in the hide from the tanning process, and the veg tan cowhide is pretty rough on your hands. It's about a 10-foot piece. something kind of soothing about listening to leather get stretched over a hook. But this is also about a 10-foot piece, 12-foot piece. And I would expect that as you do stuff and you're wet stretching stuff, you're going to have variable results as you're doing stuff. It's a natural material. It's amazing how much water squeezes out of the lace. I'm putting about 40 pounds of tension on the pole and about 5 pounds of tension or less on the piece I'm feeding back through. And you just have to play with it, because if you get too much tension, you're just going to snap it. And if you don't have enough, it's going to not squeeze the water out. But if it's weak, it'll just snap off. This is about a 400-foot strand, and I cut it a little over 1/4 of an inch. And so some of it's going to compact down to be an 1/8 inch. And some of it's going to compact down to be pretty uniform, because it's cut out of a side in circles. So part of it is through the back, part is through the neck and the belly. You see it's down to about an 1/8 of an inch there. But if it'll hold 30 pounds to 35 pounds on a strand of cowhide, while being wet stretched, it usually won't snap while you're plaiting it or tensioning it. If you don't do this process, what happens is, as you're breeding it, it'll change its dimensions on the fly. Where I had a gotcha and I went too far down. Surprised that held. There's a little gotcha on the flesh side. And that broke right where I had gotten a little narrow with it. But you want it to break before you start plaiting, or not break at all. you don't have to do this, but you can make compacted 1/8" lace this way, however long you've run through here. It looks like about 100 foot roughly on the floor. Probably can't really see the water coming out of it. The water is dripping off the hook. So this is about a 12-foot piece. Now the major part of that just straightening it out. Just going through a little no-key or friction knot just tends to curve the lace. So there's like 75 foot there. This is an extra step a lot of people don't do with veg tan hide, but it does show you where it's going to break if it's going to break. But it does compact the lace. You never lose the cowhide or the kangaroo when you do this. What you lose in width, you gain in length. So it's time consuming, but the end result is worth it. If you want strong lace. But like I said, it is a lot more work. There's a gotcha in here. And it went through. The difference between rough cut lace and wet stretch lace is like day and night. Everything is so much cleaner if the material doesn't change as you're working it. It doesn't narrow up or get spongy. And I didn't used to keep the bucket underneath it when I did this process. And it just, as it is, it makes a mess on the wall, but makes a bigger mess on the floor. To me, it's pretty incredible that this stuff doesn't break more often during this process. Especially considering how much friction and how much compression it's under. But you can tell how good the hide is. You can tell a lot about how the string's going to be if you take the time to do this extra step. Like everything else I do it overkill because I hate it when it just breaks when you're working with it. I try and show the process I use because other people may have other processes. And this is what works for me so far. I'm always open to suggestions and tips. So I'm getting down to the last 10 feet. So that's good. Stretch it the other way. It's amazing how much more water still gets squeezed out on the second pass. It's amazing how much this darkens lace as it compacts. See if I can change the angle a little bit here. And this was pretty uniform to start with, but it radically changes it, compressing it. But give this a try and see what you think of this process. All I did was stuck it in a 5-gallon bucket full of water and squeezed it out like a rag and just fed it right out of the bucket to start with. Getting down to the last 50 or 60 feet here. Dozen feet. I'm just going to run it over the hook the other direction to straighten it out. And I've discovered that if I don't straighten it out after I run it both directions, it's harder to bevel the lace because it's all wrinkly on one side. This evens out the tension further. Makes the lace more consistent. Of course, it helps to be able to cut a 400-foot long piece to start with in one pass at 7 or 8 millimeters, almost 3/8 of an inch, a little over a quarter, a little less than an eighth. Down to the last 12 foot or so. Then I'm going to try taking this off for a second. And I'll show you the end result. So there's the water squeezed out. There's 75-foot lace, a bunch of 10 or 12-foot strands, and probably 150-foot, 200-foot, something like that of lace. So again, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes, signing out.